Detective Thorpe kind of unwinds that and says how that would be impossible. And then eventually Mr. Stillwell agrees. So, you know, it's like when you boil it down to a one sentence, he said he was in Miami. That really doesn't give the whole story. Now we're opening up to the whole video once again and exactly what was said in the context, because it wasn't him just saying, oh, I was in Miami, period. It becomes clear that he thought he was in Miami that day. And then when they talk about, he puts himself with Kenneth Copeland in Miami. Mm-hmm. And then they say, well, Kenneth Copeland was in my office after the homicide, so you couldn't have been in Miami. And then eventually, I think it's fair to say that Mr. Stillwell says, okay, I understand what you're saying. That's not a direct quote, but so that, you know, I don't know why he's being recalled.
Okay, and why wasn't that presented to begin with when you had him up here before talking about either the Thomas murder or when Mr. Stillwell came and gave a statement as a victim?
Your Honor, I don't know exactly why that was not presented earlier.
Okay, all right, I'll think about that. He's not going to be our first witness. Yes, sir, Mr. Weinstein.
Good morning, Your Honor. You mentioned end runs earlier today. If you recall, maybe you don't know, Detective Dennis was the one that was supposed to be speaking about Mr. Kendrick's interview, and you rightfully sanctioned him. I would love for you to recall your righteous degree of anger at this point, but I won't bring that up.
Oh, I remember.
So I'd like you to keep that in your mind while I'm talking. But this is an attempt by the state to do an end run around that. Now, I know later you said that if they had witnesses on the list already and they could go and then talk about things. So we had someone get up and start talking about, you know, lyrics that wasn't initially supposed to talk about more than Nibin matches. But I don't believe that Thorpe was supposed to come up again. And this is just an attempt to get this testimony in about Mr. Kendrick's statement that was rightfully pretty much barred by you stopping Dennis. So I don't think they should be allowed to do this end run.
Okay, I barred Dennis. I didn't, but at the same time, y'all asked, well, can topics be covered? If they were going to be covered by him, could they be covered by other witnesses? And I said, as long as there was somebody on the witness list already, that they couldn't add people, but that if they already had somebody on the witness list who could cover those things, that they would be permitted to cover those things. So as long as we had Detective Thorpe somewhere on our witness list again, then I would deny that. So we had that long
I'm not, was he on y'all's witness list
witnesses.
again?
Was he on there anywhere?
I don't believe he was on there again, but before I make that representation, I'd like the state to verify that.
Well, we can check, Your Honor. I'm pretty sure he was, but if he wasn't, he was on the main witness list.
Yeah.
The rules of evidence only require that the witness be included in the witness list.
Oh, I know. I don't know if you were with us yet when we had the debacle about Detective Dennis, but that was a sanction. That wasn't an evidentiary ruling.
So Thorpe was not, I don't believe Thorpe was on the list to come back again. So this is an attempt to basically gut your sanction by bringing Thorpe back.
All right. If he was not on the witness list to be recalled, then I'm not going to permit it.
Your Honor, if I can recall our meeting at the bench, you didn't I don't believe you specified the shortened list. I think you said if he's a witness who's already been on the witness list, we cannot add anyone. But if he was a witness.
Okay, we'll go back and check.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor.
Because that is not my recollection. My recollection is if they were going to be testifying anyway, but they could not be added.
And my recall is the same as Your Honor's. Otherwise, your sanction would be utterly meaningless.
But that was.
We're not going to argue about it right now. We're just going to go back and check and see. Somehow, not sure how, since the court reporter who took that down isn't with us right now. But we'll see what we can do. And it was at a bench conference, so there's not going to be any watching the live stream of that and getting the answer. Okay, let's turn to this jury instruction. Does everybody have the proposal from the other side?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Essentially, y'all both got good language. I'm basically kind of just putting it together, and then I'll give y'all what I'm proposing. And if y'all wanted to make sure that I can either read them in or y'all can file those as your proposals if you want to for the instructions.
And Your Honor, I was going to ask,
Yeah.
are you planning on inquiring of the jurors if any of them cannot follow this instruction or?
I mean, no,
Okay.
that's not really what we typically do. It was just, I did it because, I mean, if you're asking somebody to disregard 3 days of testimony, that's a little unusual and more than they normally have to do. So that was why I did that in that instance.
Understood.
I just normally expect them to be able to follow my instructions.
When you're through with this, Your Honor, I just want to clarify something with the court.
All right, so I can send this to you or I can read it or both. What I'm proposing is Members of the jury, you will notice that certain of the defendants are no longer before you for reasons that do not concern you. The prosecution of those co-defendants is no longer a part of this trial. You must not speculate, make assumptions, or draw any conclusions about the possible reasons for their absence, and their absence from this trial must not in any way affect your judgment or influence your verdict as to the defendants in this case, or I could say remaining in this case. You must base your deliberations and your verdict solely on the evidence presented, and an individual determination of guilt or innocence must be made as to each defendant. Thoughts?
Thank you, Your Honor. That's fine with Mr. Kendrick.
Okay. Good for Mr. Stillwell, good for the state. All right.
And Your Honor, I just want to, since we're down to two defendants, I just want to make sure that we're still operating under the Harvey rule.
Well, I mean, do y'all want to? Unless you say differently, I'll assume a motion made by one of you is adopted by the other.
And an objection as well, Your Honor.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay, and let's see where this witness list is. So Mr. Lee's still gonna we're gonna finish up with him, and he has, I would assume at this point, been instructed not to mention any incarcerations of any of the defendants.
He has, Mr. I'm going to re-instruct again now.
All right. Okay, and did either of the remaining defendants want any sort of an instruction? As you know, we had paused because he had mentioned Quay. Well, he had understandably read part of a post that said free Quay. Anybody want any kind of instruction about that? Or at this point, would it? Okay. All right, anything else before we get the jury in?
May I just approach the evidence?
Sure.
I just want-
Laura.
Your Honor, could we get 5 minutes before you bring the jury in?
Sure.
Thank you.
And in that 5 minutes, maybe we can change that clock because that's going to confuse me all day long because we changed to standard time a couple of days ago and that's still on daylight savings. So maybe during the break we could do that. All right. Yes, let's recess for a few
We're
minutes.
putting a lot of faith in our IT department, Your Honor.